Dr. Chaz Jones. Chaz Jones is by profession, or by education, he's a nuclear chemist. But I think he spent a lot of his time as a scientist in the rubber industry. Chaz is an archaeologist as well, retired now. He's not particularly well known in this area, except for when he came last year to do the audit. But he is known nationally and internationally for his finding the Battle of Fulford, which is in 1066 in York. It's all over the internet, so I won't talk to you about any more about it, except have a good look at it and see the tapestry he created to shed the mark of the Battle of Fulford. It's quite fascinating. Also, we have with us is Professor Stephen Harding from Nottingham University. Stephen's a biochemist, but he should be known to all of you here. He's very well known on the world for his keen interest in Viking ancestry. And again, he's all over the internet. So you're going to ask now, some of you don't know who I am, but I'm just a retired police constable from the police station. And what am I doing with two academics standing next to me? Well, my next words were, I'm going to tell you, but actually, I'm not going to tell you, because Chad's here is chomping at the bit to tell you what he found last year in the audit and the results we've got from it. So I'm not really going to say much. He's also very worried that if Steve and I gave off 20 or 30 minute sort of ego chat about how we found those, then by the time he gets into the nitty-gritty of his talk, you'll all be falling asleep. Of course, you know what it's like to fall asleep at a book launch, for example, don't you, John Barr? I want to speak. Okay. Where we're to. So, hang on, I've got one more thing to do. Yes, two things, Chad, before we start. This project started in January 2005 from our past historian to Steve Harding. And it's taken until last February before Chad his wizardry in the project with his organs. So it's been a really long time. We've had peaks and troughs. We've had two immediate peaks in the experiment. Steve found the drawing of the boat written or drawn by John McRae. And secondly, when the first guy who did the ground penetration radar did one, he came up with the result and said to Steve, well, I can't tell you for sure there's a note there. It's definitely the boat shaped anomaly. And that kept us all going. Unfortunately, we had two big troughs. Steve had to walk away from this project for 7 years, and when he got done, he might be able to explain why. So nothing sinister, but it just had to stop. And then we had COVID come along, and there was another 3-year break, and nothing got done at all. My last thing is that there's 3 people who helped keep this project going. Without them, we'd still be found. The first guys who started off Rural Archaeology CIC were Mr. Graham Burgess and Mr. Howard Mortimer, and they set the groundwork. They did all the liaising with Green King and basically kept the project alive within the group. But last but not least is the current chair of Rural Archaeology, so CIC, Dominia Dennett. She came to the group with her own leadership and organisational skills, which were so beneficial to this particular project. She, without her, like I said, we'd still be foundering. She chaired all the meetings just at the run-up to the day, a couple of months before. She chaired all the meetings, she delegated all the jobs out to people, and she made sure they carried them all out properly. When she came along to the day, she dealt with all the administrative matters, she dealt with all the publicity, which is her favourite thing, and dealt with all the civic dignitaries, and just put a coach of professionalism on the projects. But more important, I think, to all the troops who are doing that, to all the volunteers, every morning she would turn up with 2 cardboard boxes full of lovely homemade sandwiches by herself with crisps, peanuts, crackers and cakes. It kept everybody going, and it helped create such a fantastic group which we had. It really was one of the best. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a round of applause for Dr. Chad Jones.
Many thanks, Phil. Can I just check, can everybody hear me at the back? Everybody okay? Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. It's great to be talking to a full hall. What I want to do is to kind of lift the lid on what we were, or how we were trying to find the boat. Because it's buried so deeply, we'll be able to just extract it and put it on rather like this. Okay? I really want to, at the moment, we're in that era of political mayhem where we're being asked to believe things. I'm going to try and show you why we believe the things that we do believe, to give you a little bit of the science. So, go on with the first slide, and then very quickly after that, the second slide. Right, we're nearly there. Is the key thing? Go on the next slide, please, Cliff. Okay, no, go back one. Back one. Clear? Yep. There we go. This is where we really started, is what I'm saying. Okay, there you see a picture of the boat that was drawn that Steve got hold of. And I just want you, we got a few pictures of what the pub looked like being constructed. There's lots of little bits and pieces along the way, which I will try and point out to you because many of them will become relevant as we go on through the project. There's an awful lot of very small details turn out to be important. I'm sorry to half turn my back on you like that, but excuse me, it's the way I can share the slides with you. Next slide, please. We've got a lot to get through. The years 1938. Right, so before one gets onto any project, first thing you have to do is you have to go away and you sit quietly in libraries, you start digging out various bits of paper to see what you're going to do. Try and plan the project, try and see if the whole thing makes sense. Now, there had been the hope that they might try and dig this boat up, but you kind of, before you start to do any project like that, you really have to know that it is there. And so I was suggesting that what we try and do first is to drill some holes. But in my book research, two things that I did. One is I looked to see that there was the berth there. Now, if we're finding a boat stranded somewhere, if we think there's a boat there, it's got to get there somehow. And the most likely thing is either the seashore was there or it came along a river. And there, very conveniently, right by the thing, was the old course of the Birket. Again, more of that anon. The picture you see on the right-hand side of the screen is from the architect's drawing of the pub, which also turned out to be very important because it was through digging this cellar, which is where they keep the beer nice and cool. It was through digging that cellar that John McCrae actually noticed the wood outline. And I was talking to his granddaughter, and she says, oh, he was a very determined, very interested in history. And because he was on working time, they weren't interested in him doing any digging. But he then went and did a little bit of excavation after work and exposed a little bit of the boat. And the shape, the precise shape of the cellar and the precise shape that was dug out. This is the only bit, apart from putting in the foundations, this was the only bit that was dug deeply. Next slide, please. I'm going to mention about augers, so I thought I'd better just tell you a little bit what an auger is. Up at the top, I hope they stand out enough, but you will see there are just a whole lot of rods. It was roughly in the middle there. This doesn't. My pointer doesn't. If you go straight up above there, just down there, those are the handles of the augers. But over in the right hand, on the left hand corner rather, you will see these rather different shaped things for gouging stuff out. Now, these again, take a look at them because they become more important later in our story. We did a little bit of training, as you can see, just showing people how the thing works. It's quite messy work, and it isn't the precision work sometimes you like in a laboratory where you can pick things out with a tweezer and put it there absolutely cleanly. When you're out in the field, you have to rely upon a fantastic team, because there you will see there's a tape measure lying alongside. Always when you see them doing anything here, you'll find a tape measure. Everything had to be measured very carefully. And when you push this thing out of one of these augers, you've got to make sure that it fits into you measure down how deep it is, and it fits into that so that you know how deep it is. Again, you will see how very important that is a little bit later on. Next slide, please. So that's an auger. Okay, now, again, a little bit more science before we start diving into what we actually did. We walk around on the surface and we think that everything is, this is the way it is. Believe me, well, don't believe me, I will show you in a few moments how just below the surface, there's all sorts of stuff going on. Now, we were very lucky and we had my friend, and he's not here, but I always refer to him as Mad Mike. He's a geologist. He's a fantastic, he's a great man for detail. And he took these photographs on the first day of the project, looking at the sand. And he said to me, there is something very odd because some of that sand is nice and round at one level, but the other two lots, you're getting these very mixed up, very coarse, very mixed sorts of sand. Normally, naturally, sand tends to get graded and sorted by the process that it. Here it hadn't been. And he said, the only time I've ever seen this before is when we get a tsunami. And I lodged that thought in my brain. He was only there for one day, but I lodged that one in my brain. Now, the other thing, so that's a little bit about sand. The other thing that's important to tell you is to distinguish between silt and clay. Silt is the grey, gloopy stuff that flows along streams and gets, you find it everywhere. I'll often refer to it as alluvium because it comes down rivers, and it's a great mixture of ground up rock, bits of dust, bits of ground up animal, bits of vegetation. It's all sorts. But it's quite distinct from clay. Again, clay is going to be very important in our story because clay is quite different. Clay is dissolved mineral and it reacts in a very different way, and it comes in all sorts of colors. Again, watch out because we're going to show you some of those different colors and explain how very important they are to the preservation and the state that we've got in the project. I hope I'm not going too much into the science but I really want you to understand how we reach the conclusions that we have to. I'm not just going to say, hey, we've done this, we've done that. I really would like to try and everybody seems to be paying attention. Well done, thank you. So could I move on to the next slide, please, Cliff? Right. So on day one of the project, the first thing I wanted to do is I'd seen that there was the river Burkitt was supposed to be somewhere near here. So we just did what we call a transect. We just drilled a whole series of holes across the line where I thought the Burkitt was likely to be. And to my joy and delight on that Sunday evening when we went home, I plotted it. And if you look at the dark blue lines at the bottom, don't worry, in fact, some of them went deeper than others. But that, first of all, that was lovely blue clay that we were looking for. Blue clay is lovely because the blue clay keeps out the oxygen. If we've got blue clay, there's a chance we're going to find some preserved organics. There's a chance we're going to find wood, which I was very pleased about. And the other thing we had is we had this really river basin, and the boat that we were looking for, I'll put the pointer up on the wall here if I can. No, it's decided it doesn't want to play. If you look at on the left-hand side of those bar charts, you will see in the boat, if it was there, was going to be just a little bit further over than that. Sand down there that really, I mean, it was there were one or two people, there's one person who was here going up there. It was very sticky, it really jammed everything up. But those are there, and the stuff I've put in as grey, that's the alluvium, that's the stuff that I built about. So we had a river which could have brought a boat there, and we had blue clay which could have preserved it, and that was the blue clay that was reported by John McCrae in his quite optimistic. When you press the next little thing, I think something strange might happen to the slide, so you might have to press it twice. But if you press it the first time, yeah, that's how I've got it. And the next thing. Okay. The next day, we had a wonderful team of groundspeople working ahead of us as on the archaeological side. And they were going around and lifting the stones, checking to make sure, because the area we were looking at, I knew there was the internet, there was the main power cable went in there, the gas supply went in there, the wastewater came out of there, and the fresh water, and we also, just to add to it, had rainwater. So I knew that we were going to have some challenges. And on the Sunday, we had an engineer amongst the Royal Archaeology group, and I asked him to experiment with trying to see if we could drill sideways, just to see the equipment. It's never been tried before. I've done an awful lot of augering. I've never seen it tried before, but I realized we were going to have to do it. I'm very glad that I did, because we encountered this, we couldn't drill any holes where we wanted to drill any holes, because there was a great lump of concrete there, notwithstanding the fact that just outside this slab of concrete, there were all this mishmash of pipes. So, you know, we missed that this wonderful derrick had been put up, which we missed out on the first photographs. Could I have the next slide? Right. Could we press again, because I'm missing my slab? There should be a slab there. Could you there? Right. So the slab appeared. So there we went. That was precisely where we had the expectation. Again, I'm going to show you that map at the end without the slab, but where we've got all the results, and you will see just how awkwardly positioned that was. But given where we had the report of where John McRae had said he'd seen the boat. Now, that slab could have been put there for a variety of perfectly legitimate reasons. There is this rather now discredited thing of in situ preservation, where they cover a bit of archaeology over, saying, we'll just leave it like that, because you can come back a little bit later, and when the next generation ends, it'll all be nicely preserved. It doesn't work, I have to tell you. It's possible that it was just part of the building work, but that had been put there for that thing. So I am very, very, very confident that, because it aligns absolutely with that picture we just showed you of the crane, that it was actually put there quite innocently to act as the derrick. So this was the side crane that would lift things around. So we had a problem. Next slide, please. We were now on to plan B. So we started collecting the quartz. Now, I just to show you a little bit about what was going on. So we lifted all the slabs. We then put these waste pipe down, because the real danger, it's a real problem when you're doing augering, is you drill a hole, you lift the auger out, and it fills up with all sorts of rubbish and stuff like that. So the idea of this was to seal that off, so that wouldn't happen, so we wouldn't get too much contamination. So that's what they're doing there, and you'll see somebody is down the bottom guiding it very carefully, because you've got to hit the hole, go right slap back down into the hole, and there's an awful lot of measuring going on all the time. And you'll see a picture on the right hand side there. We've actually got two augers working. We actually had two sets of augers, because it was a little bit deeper than we thought. When we got rooted down low, we could sometimes only use one because we didn't have enough of the tubes, but we're going to see if we can scrounge a few more of those. So that's a little bit of the process that's going. All of these are getting as near as we can to both. I was trying to understand a little bit of the context as near the slab as we could, and also to find out where the slab was. Next slide, please. Right. I'm trying to get the ones that are below the slab. And here I just have to take my hand once again to the amazing team of volunteers that turned up. We had lots of people who were archaeologists, lots of people who just came along because we had people in the rowing club. They were magnificent. The magnificent, fortunately, it was February, which the Royal said that really the only time we had to do before Valentine's Day or between Valentine's Day and half term. We really had to fit into a very narrow slot. And we were blessed. The weather was not bad. It was windy, but it wasn't too wet. But they battled through that. Now, as you can see there, I say it requires some brute force, as you can see from the image in the middle. It really is very hard when you see those great derricks drilling down for oil. There you've got a great big machine of hundreds of horsepower driving the thing down. We had to do that with our muscles. It's hard work. it's hard work because it's not only that, but it's got to be precise. You know, it doesn't just, you can't just put the power on any old time. You've got to put the power on at the right time. And of course, once you've got that thing, you then got to measure it. You've got to get it all out very carefully. And if you look at the picture on the right hand side there, you'll see some. You see, it's really, we're only talking something that's less than a foot. I mean, you know, sort of 15 centimeters long, quite a small little bit, and they've got to get it so that pack it all together in the right order. So there's an awful lot of going into that. It's hard work. It's hard work. Next slide, please. Okay, we're already on plan B. We were drilling where I was confident the boat was. We were pulling up fibres which looked as if they could belong to planking from a boat, but they were all mushed around. It didn't give me a clear enough picture that would allow me to say, yeah, we're on the boat. So I said, stop work, everybody gather round. I have learned that the wisdom of crowds is to be respected. If you have a problem and you ask, this is going to sound a bit like a sermon, isn't it? If you get everybody involved and you say, look, here is the issue, can anybody come up with a solution? So I went through all the things, I showed, I said, here are the fibres, here's what we've done, here's why we're drilling here, here's why we're drilling in these particular places, but this is what I'm getting a jumble of fibres, and I shouldn't be getting a jumble of fibres. Somebody then picked up, but we're still using this very small auger, and you're telling us to go round and round and round and round and round with it, so of course they're going to be jumbled up. Yeah. Quite right. They said, why don't we use one of those big augers which you showed us, but we haven't used yet? And I said, well, only because I just think it's going to be so hard to get through this, particularly there's a black a layer of sand, very, very, very hard to get through. Anyway, they said, we'll give it a go. Anyway, so off they set, and they first of all made a hole big enough through the sand, which they did. You know, they drilled a hole through, and then they got into this nice alluvium below. And once they got down to there, it was plain sailing. But it was only made possible because somebody else, without, they didn't talk to me at all. They just looked at the problem, and they could see drilling in is fairly easy. You can put your weight against the auger and you can drive it in. It's when you start to pull it out, because yes, there's a sort of vacuum there, and you're trying to pull that thing out. It's very hard work. And somebody went away, Mr. Potts, I think his name was Joe Potts, went away and designed an amazing thing. I say, I've never seen any auger use it before. And he came back with this, and he went away that night and did a few modifications. But it allowed a whole team to get underneath and pull these things in and out. But from my point of view, the great thing was we could now start to take really nice, about sort of 7 or 8 centimeter plugs of the soft material where I expected it to be. The very first one that they got up, which was at the boat, I took it and I washed it, and I found most beautiful set of aligned fibres. There were only fibres, but you're going to see there's reasons why a lot of the boat has got, particularly on this side. I found these wonderful aligned fibres, and I thought, yeah, they were where I was hoping they were going to be. They were horizontal, so I thought, this is really good. But I also realised that in the field, in the pub car park, we didn't have the facility to really process these things. So at that stage, I said to the team, right, we've got the new technique. We are definitely on the game. We're in the right place. What we're going to have to do now is I'm going to have to pack these in my van. I'm going to take them home, and I'm going to have to work on them at home. Next slide, please. So we're on to plan C now. And this is just, so this is what I did. If you look on the right-hand side, it looks, let me explain what it is. When I got these samples home, in order to look at the detail, first of all, I set them up as a spray bench where it's power, it sort of squirted water. It's just horticultural equipment. I set up one of those, but it was too strong. It would actually damage, it was marking the very delicate thing. So I then went for a misting bench. Now, a misting bench, if you imagine walking through a fog, it's pretty much like that. It's so little water, but the evidence, as I will show you in a few slides' time, was just so very delicate that you couldn't have powerful squirting water. You had just to have this very, very, very gentle flow. It took a very long time. There was a little bit in the midst would escape. And the mist would then come down, fall on the samples, I'm going to do 60 centimetres at a time, fall on the sample, and then all the water would come down here and get caught through these various sieves. So nothing escaped, nothing can get away, and we'll see that was great later on. But I then refer you to the one that bit in the middle. In the middle there, I don't know whether the people at the back have got good enough eyesight, but there's a wonderful pattern of, I mean, if you imagine that brown was a piece of wood, a bit of rotten wood, I was able to wash out the grey material in between, so you can actually see the pattern of a bit of wood. There were lots and lots of bits like this, lots of these bits of wood, and this very slow process would remove from the pattern, would remove the grey, sometimes grey material, sometimes it was sand. And again, we'll explore that a little bit. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner there, sometimes we got all sorts of gubbins, including this wonderful red sandstone, which you find quite a lot of around it. There were lots and lots, which made my life very interesting. I used to feel, yeah, it was really nice suddenly when you see this red thing emerging from the thing. And the one in the middle at the top centre, you probably can't see it. I think I've got a better photograph of that a little bit later, so I'll explain that one when we get to it. Next slide, please, Cliff. Right, now, again, I'm not sure you can really make out what I saw. So what I'm going to try and do is describe to you. If you look, it's that grey lump at the top. So this is great. This is clay. It may look like this is clay. This sand for at least 2 days to gradually erode this thing down. But I want you to notice, you can see those little brown bits. That's a typical bit of wood from the boat, and those little brown bits, that's the wood that that's as much wood as has survived. But in that thing, there's a really good shape of a branch coming out from. There's a bit of wood going. So if you imagine a tree trunk like that, and you imagine a branch coming out, that's basically what we've gone through there. We've actually got the bit where the branch comes off. In the sieve there, you will see, or I can see, but there's just a whole little series of fibres which we washed out after a couple of days, washed out all of that clay. Now, I kind of put this on one side and thought, yeah, that's interesting. But we're now kind of moving to the, what does all this mean? I mean, at the moment, all I'm telling you about is how we gather the data, how we have to gather this very careful data. And then I'm now moving on to sort of how do we make sense of it? And I'm jumping a little bit ahead there because just so that we're saying goodbye to this bit of love and play for now. But once I knew what the shape was, I can then say, actually, that was sitting up right up against. These are all his models on there. So what we're looking at, but I didn't know what it was until we knew what the shape of the boat was. So I'm sort of introducing you to the idea of all gradually starts to click together. There's a bit more to do before it all really properly clicks together. So let's move on to the next slide. Bye-bye. I got to know that bit of wood extremely well. Right. Planks were what I was really looking for. I wanted to find planks because the boat is made of planks. It's I told you, I mentioned earlier that I was looking for the parallel, horizontally aligned fibres because that's kind of all that remained. Again, the way wood decay is a very specialised subject of which I'm not an expert, but I understand that I've certain fibres survive longer than others for different types of wood. Now, if you look at the picture on the left-hand side, again, you've got to take this slightly on trust, but on if anybody, if you want to come up afterwards, and I can put this like that, but if there is a really, on two sides of the grey, there is a really clear impression as if it had been pressed into a bit of wood. You really can't see the bit of wood. So what I did, when I found this, I was able to measure the angle that it was at. And in between it, you might be able to see it's sand, there was sand in this one. This one was quite near the top, where it's got the yellow sand, and you may remember right back on the first slides, we saw there was a layer of yellow sand. So the yellow sand had flowed, as the wood had rotted, the yellow sand had slowly gone into it. But the one on the other side was rather different. This was one much lower down, and there was just a void. I've moved the two bits a little bit further apart, but before I did that, I was able to measure the void in the thing quite accurately to within. So I was able to measure the thickness of several planks, and I'm very pleased to say that when you start to check with the boat builders, those things seem to align. There's a bit more work to be done on that, but so far they seem to be, the thicknesses we get near the bottom, the side, and the top align very closely with the ones you find on Viking era boats. Anything else that I need to say about that? No. Next slide, please. Right. So it's back to the drawing board. Okay, so I've now got all of these very carefully worked out charts where they've listed all the different layers, all the interesting things. Plus, we've had some people on a table. And I see one of the people who did it sitting at the back there, and they would go through this thing, and they would just take sometimes regular samples, sometimes things they just thought were interesting. So I was going through what we had and going in to look at these samples. Now, this particular one, you may see, these are big, it's a graph paper. These are A3 size pieces of graph paper where I'm plotting all of this. And I'm plotting all these for every single one of the auger cores. But this one is particularly interesting because in the porch, we've actually drilled 3 at slightly different angles. And so I take all that. So yeah, so I've got all that, and I began, when I saw this, I began to think, yeah, that's really interesting. There's a plank there, there's a plank there. But then I went on and I looked at some other ones. Next slide, please. And when I started to line up, because we knew how deep the things were, when I started to line up the planks between the different things, they began to form a really quite nice shape. Now, bear in mind, this is not a Norton chart that you can build it from. I'm just drawing these the various shapes along the line. I'm not this. I don't go try and build a boat based on these, but you can build them on the basis of sorry. I'm confusing myself. I'm really confusing you as well. But that's not a nautical drawing. Those are just me taking the drawings taking out the planks from the various different augers that I've drawn on those A3 sheets of paper. And the great thing was they really aligned incredibly well. The angles which the boards were from one drill auger to the next drill auger. So it all seemed to be coming together very nicely. You'll hear the word clinker built. This was a clinker built boat. This is absolutely typical of Viking era. And the clinker built is when you get one plank laid over another plank, laid over another plank, laid over another plank. And this particular but I've drawn those lines across it there to indicate the angles of fracture, because sometimes that's all I have. But then this one isn't part of the ones that I could really plot, because there wasn't quite enough precision in the data that I had. Plus, it had very clearly, rather than the gap being filled by another material, what's happening is as things bottom, for some reason, perhaps because it's only 3 meters, 3,000 basically on the cliff, because this is quite near the surface, I think it's just been compressed. So you see, I put on there. You see that nice red that's running down there. If you see right in the top of it, that we found. I've got about sort of 15 little bits of iron, or evidence of bits of iron. Next slide, please. There we are. And the great, okay, I have something that I like to refer to as, you need the eye of an archaeologist to see that as a nail, because when things have been in the ground for nearly 1,000 years, the rust. I mean, you know, in your garages, in your garden, you'll find this. What happens is the rust drives the chemical process to create, in this case, what we call concretion, and it creates a sort of iron concrete. It sticks all these little bits together. But there is a nice, we've got about a 12 millimeter long nail. And the nice thing about this was, what happened, this was a week ago, 10 days ago. But once I got on the boat, I looked out where I thought there might be a couple of nails, and I went then to the. We've got lots of samples. We really have got a lot of samples we took. We haven't had to where all this and about the other one was just a concrete lump, but clearly there had been a bit of iron to bind to rust to bind all this together. So take my word, as the eye of an archaeologist, I can see a nice nail running right the way through that. But the great thing was, not only could I predict in the collection where we might find nails, but then once I'd got that plot that I'd started to do, I then went back and started to look at where we had found little bits of iron that turned up in the augering we'd done, and they aligned very nicely with the shape of the boat. So this is all building in my mind a picture that, yeah, all the bits are fitting together rather nicely. Right. Things are going very well. So it's time for something to go wrong. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, no, sorry, this isn't where it went wrong, but this is the introduction to where we got another surprise, but it was a good time. Yeah. So we need to take these things off to with a group of volunteers, where we set about actually taking some of the samples and trying to extract enough wood, because what we wanted to do was we wanted to get the date from the boat. Now, because at this stage, we've got to wind back a little bit, I didn't know the shape of the boat, I didn't know there was a boat there for certain. So plan A, plan A was, sorry, I'm not plan A, my idea for getting the date was to look, well, let's get some stuff that's above the boat, let's get some stuff below the boat, and let's get some bits that are spaced nicely in between, and that will give us a not earlier than, not later than, and we might be lucky and we might hit something in between. So that was the theory. Good theory. Didn't quite work out like that. So we had great fun there, and that gives you some idea of sort of a washed out, rather similar to the thing we saw in the set a little bit earlier. That's the state of a lot of the wood. Next slide, please. Now, those are the little samples that we sent off. Just to explain a little bit about carbon dates, they're great. But if you look at the one at the top, if you see that those you can see on the y-axis, the one going upwards, you'll see a nice little red curve, and it's got that green line to keep growing out of it. Okay, that's what's actually measured. That they're measuring the amount of the carbon 14. That's the primary. That's the result you get. But you've then got to interpret this, and we then feed this into a calibration curve. Now, over the years, wonderful scholars and students have worked away, and they have managed to find dendrochronology by finding one bit of tree next to another bit of tree, so they all slightly overlap. They're going all the way back through history, and they can then, so they can match the tree rings to each other. And what they do is they then take a sample of the carbon date from that to find out what in that particular year, how much the carbon 14 is changing. And you then end up with this calibration curve, which we all use. There are a few of them, but this is the one we use in Britain. And you will see the one at the top. If you look across where the green is, the blue is the calibration curve. Because climate change, because we get solar storms, because so many other things happen, that affects the amount of carbon 14 that actually gets produced. So that is, the curve allows for that. But if you look at the one at the bottom there, it intersects in an awful lot of places. So we have a much wider spread. Sometimes carbon date is actually great. I'm working on a Roman crossing, and it's terrible because the climate was going haywire in about the between about the 6th and 7th century. So the curve is not just wobbly, the curve really is going up and down. It's been very difficult. It's taken a lot of years to actually manage to really work out what the date of this particular road was. So carbon dates are great, but you just need to accept that depending upon what the date they throw up, there is some variation. So next slide, please. Boom. So there was quite a lot of despondency, it's fair to say, amongst some others. Now, not for me. I love data. If you have good data, data doesn't tell a lie. Data is there. It's for you to try and understand, to interpret it. And it is almost, this is a scientist speaking, when it doesn't fit your model, it's actually more exciting because you think, oh, I've got to find another model. I've got to work out what this is all about. Now, the reason this thing is so upsetting is when normally you would find the older stuff down here, then, as you go up, you find the younger stuff at the top. That's normal. You get the new stuff at the top and the very old stuff is very deep down. That's not what's happening here. 3 of those curves are going the other way. The old stuff is on the top. The young stuff is at the bottom. That can't happen unless something has come and overturned it. Go back to my geologist friend, Mad Mike. He told me that there was evidence of tsunami type events happening here. And that is one thing that can explain this. There are all sorts of forests out on the other side of the Mersey, and this wood, and when the land, there were all sorts of forests and peat deposits all the way. And every time one of these storms comes along, it whisks off the top lot, brings it all in, and dumps it. So, and then later on, the next storm comes. There's no new wood, no new peat going out in the middle of the ocean. So the next time one of these storms comes, it takes the next layer, and it just keeps doing this time after time. So you gradually end up with young stuff on the bottom, old stuff on the top. Only in one case, so we've got those two. If you look at the purple and the blue line, I'm looking at the right-hand diagram. They are interesting, doubly interesting, because they are very similar. So whatever happened in one probably happened in the other. The deposition would be rather similar. Now, we've got the green one along the bottom. That was right back at the beginning. If you remember, we were looking at the bird kit and the various layers there. So well away from the boat. But even at the boat, we've got deeper down, we've got the younger, and further, much older is above it. So these events seem to be happening. This wasn't a one-off event. It does seem that these surges happen, I suggest, a number of times. It's not, we don't have enough evidence from here, but I'm starting to dig out the literature, and quite a number of these are recorded, these great, very powerful surges. So, and then we've got the one in red, wonderful. We've got the young stuff at the top and the older one. That is from, not from within in what I've already started to call the boat area. That's from nearby the boat area. Right, next slide, please, Claire. So, one thing that I set myself at the beginning, the task of trying to explain is, why did the boat end up here? You don't find boats found everywhere. They are extremely rare. You've heard of the Sutton Hoo boat, the Dover boat. They are very, 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 very rare. People didn't abandon boats. If you go to places like Chester and York and you look at the houses there, when an archaeologist or a historian takes you round, they will show you timbers in the houses, and they'll say those timbers in the houses, they're old boat timbers. The boats would be brought up there and they'd be broken up. When they were no longer fit to go out to sea, they would be broken up and they would be used for another purpose. You didn't waste all that wonderful oak planking that was used to make the thing. So why had it ended up here? Right. Inside the boat, what we find is not simply the carbon dates, but also this jumble of material, the stone, the bits of peat, the different sorts of clay mixed in with bits of organic material. It's a real jumble. So what the evidence supports is that the boat was sitting quite happily there, up on the bank, probably pulled up out of the water. This great whoosh of water comes over and starts to fill and pours in here and starts to fill the boat and sink it. A little bit comes out over the edge here and goes down into the thing, but we haven't really encountered that. So when I drill here, I find the normal profile of a riverbed. When I drill here, I find this jumble. So all this material has been dumped and held inside the boat there. So now you have this boat sitting in the water, under the water, pressed down hard into the clay. Nobody is about to start digging that boat out and bringing it back into use. It's a goner. That's how there is just really good, strong evidence. Don't know what to do on that, but very strong evidence that that is how the boat came to be there. That is how it came to be stuck in the mud and left there. Right. So we're really going, we're coming now towards the end. So next slide, please. We're back in Steve's laboratory now. We needed to explain why we had so little wood. If you leave wood exposed to air, we know that it will rot. We know people will come and pinch it and use it for firewood. But a lot of this stuff was buried deep down, and I just wanted to start checking with what the environment was like, which there are various ways of doing. We can check for something called iron pan, which is a very natural process where when the alluvium or deposit runs out of air, when it's cut off from a supply of air, it then starts to turn around and it starts to suck it out of the iron oxide, which is everywhere in the soil. The soil gets its colour from the iron oxide. It sucks all that oxygen off that iron, and that little ball bit of iron is then left there, and it just gradually just sinks there, unloved by anybody, sinks down, and eventually forms a layer. Iron pan is a thing that a problem that farmers have, but way back in early historic times, that was the stuff. This iron pan used to build up quite nice and deeply in marshes, and that was the stuff that the early iron makers used to come along, and we call it bog iron. They used to come along and use this bog iron to smelt and turn into iron. So there wasn't any of that. So I knew there was lots of options about. I'm afraid when you're trying to preserve a bit of wood, having lots of nice damp conditions where bacteria can thrive and there's got lots of oxygen, it's not going to survive. Boats are only going to survive if they're encased in this anaerobic clay, or they're encased in heat, where there's no chance for air to get in and the bugs to start working. Then we started to look at the pH, and the pH, well, I've never, ever encountered such a range of pH. pH on every archaeological site is 7, give or take 0.1. I've never come across such a variation. Whether that is something to do with dumping cleaning fluids on it or something like that, but that is a really wide range. Whatever the reason, it again is very deleterious to the preservation of any wood that was around there. Now, again, I'm sorry, you can't really see it, but I just want I said at the beginning, the clay is quite different from the mud. It's a very special sort of mud. And in the top right-hand corner, can you see that in the middle, it's grey, and on the outside, it's a brown colour. So that's one of the samples that we took, that was one of the bits that we took away, and just in the time, although it was kept well wrapped up, even in that time, it's managed already, the oxygen started to get in and turn it brown. So very, very quickly, oxygen finds its way inside these things. Indeed, when I'm on a site, we have to say, right, when we're going to take pictures of it, I'll have 2 or 3 people will go in there, clear off the face, and then take photographs. If we have to do it within a couple of minutes, if we leave it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it's all brown. You don't see the wonderful colours anymore. Oxygen gets in there, gets to work on the iron, and you get this lovely rough. But that also shows, though, that we did have the conditions for the preservation of wood, which is why we do have those little fragments of wood. A few of them have managed, in spite of the adverse conditions to which they've been set, a few of them have survived. And next slide, please. Very quickly. These are kind of representatives of the early boats that have survived. There are not very many. You have log boats. This was a plank boat. This wasn't a log boat. You then get the second one. It is the only one, I think it comes from Germany. It is a Roman era riverboat, flat bottomed, couldn't go to sea, doesn't have planks. The things are held together with cord and various things. They don't use iron nails in it. And we've got a couple of other examples of very, very early boats. None of them, their construction, their shape, none of them are anything like. The only thing that looks like our boat is a Viking era shape boat. The construction and the shape are all consistent with it being a Viking era boat. Those are some of the options we have, which I have to explore. Next slide, please. So this is where I've got up to so far with the planning. If you look at these on the left, starting on the left-hand side, those are the profiles that the arrow points you in to where they were found, kind of along the edge of the slab there. We then have, if you look now to the top right-hand corner, you see the bubble there pointing in, and that dotted line. Right at the beginning, I said it was quite important. I looked at what they had to excavate in order to put the cellar in, and that is pretty near the line they would have had to have dug in order to to get the right slope in order to be able to build the cellar. And it is just beyond there, where if you look at the sort of speech bubble, it is just beyond there where John McCrae actually found the picture which you saw of the front end of a boat. So it all fits nicely. What I did is I did a whole series of templates, and I tried to get the match to various points. I do put the thing. This is the first plot. There is more data to be gathered. There is a bit more data to be analysed. I pointed out. I've still got to plot the AO, and I pointed out the various places. I'm remarkably pleased that we actually made them drill in the right places, which is quite inspired test work. We had the possible location starting, but we were finding all these other little bits on the way. So when I go home in the evening, I'll be looking at these things, and I'll be doing a bit. Oh, do you remember signpost hands? Do you remember doing those when you were at school? Yes. Well, I was doing a lot of signpost hands on my calculator and working out what angle that went in and where we were likely to find it at what sort of depth. So we kind of guessed. And I'm really rather pleased that we seem to have got some really. So I've got lots more data still to work on to really refine the shape, and those other cores have some really juicy, nice bits inside them. The one at this far end, the right hand end, is the E series, which is possibly the richest of the lot because it's furthest away and the least disturbed. It's an absolutely great series, and there's so much data there. It is yet to go through it. But as you see, it's very, very, very near I mean, it is actually pretty near the area that was seen by when John McCrae actually he had the excavator, they dug the hole. He then went back into this clay and dug a little bit further down to expose the boat. And I think that the E series is going to get there very easy. I also, if you look at one flat bang in the middle, that was done because, and I was actually involved in that because the possibility is, you know, a lot of people are asking, could this have been a burial? Could this have been put there? I've explained that this, I don't think it was. I am almost certain that this was sunk by this great deluge. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been just, you know, somebody could have got their shovels out and they could have filled it to sit there. If so, it's unique. I don't think that's the case. But to confirm that, I've been drilling down into the middle because had there been any organic remains, had there been any sort of burial thing, I am fairly certain that because we drilled 4 different holes to look around there, and we found nothing at all to me that indicates that there's anything in the middle of the boat. We couldn't, you know, there's no cargo, there's nothing there that I can see that makes me think, this was a burial. So that pretty much wraps up what I want to say. That's where we're at the moment. We've got something. There's a little bit more work. There is more work. There's more science to be done. And I think Steve is going to talk a little bit more about how we might like some of the things we've got planned. We need a bit of money to do some of these things. Could I then have my last slide, please, Claire? So this, I showed this one up because School Dev is one of the ones you will, if you go to the Roskilde, many of you might have been there. This was a museum where there were a series of boats that they sank at Roskilde, intentionally sank at Roskilde, in order to make it harder for people to sail in and sack port. And this one happens to be almost. It turns out the picture I drew before. If you look at the measurements and the shape of that, and you compare it with that, they're within 10 centimeters in terms of width and in terms of length of each other. And you can also there see some of the needs. There are lots of little bits inside there, which I think match up to bits that I have seen in the thing. So now that I've got This is only 10 days a week. This is really quite recent. This is an ongoing process. So that's a stage we're at the moment. It's an iterative process. I'm going to go back and look at the data again, but we're really honing it in. One very last thing I wanted to say is you look, there's down the right-hand side, there's lots of wood. Down the left-hand side, there's no wood. That's because the left-hand side was exposed to the elements, was actually very good. The other side, and that is wrong the same as we've got on this boat. The bit on the right-hand side, that was the bit that was covered in the clay, this inundation of clay, sealed it there, preserved it. But the stuff on the outside, which is the only bit we can get at, so the only bit we can see is the bit where there isn't wood. Hey, that's archaeology for you, that's science for you. You have to take what you're given, and I hope that I have managed to persuade you that we really do have, given all the difficulties for plan A, B, C, we've actually managed to get very close to telling you what lies below the part over yonder. Thank you very much for your attention.
When I go to Steve now, and that's very great to read with you tell the work of Julian States. Absolutely, amazing. But before we ask questions from answers podcasts to questions, just to say, with the one testing that we've been given, what Charles didn't say from our data things, but we're also able to find out species of the wood as well. And what was actually intriguing with this, what we did have, is there weren't planting wood at all. They all came from acanthus species, and acanthus species is sort of brushwood, which you get on areas of marsh, boggy areas. Of course, this area of Wirral is full. If you notice all these carnates all over the place, carnate, 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 carp, seal bar, comes from Old Welsh sharp, which means brushwood on marshy areas. What we did was brushwood. That was before we knew the line of the planting in the mud. So we'll be really intriguing when we get enough bits of wood, planting or eelwood to analyse. Test species with the DNA analysis and things and make sure it's line, bleach or oak, or yeah, that would be great. And then yes, it is dated and see what that has to say. And do also other tests that we can do on DNA to get an idea where wood came, where wood came from. Do pollen dates and things. There's lots of tests that we can do. Anyway, if I have questions.
If you put your hand up, I'll bring the speaker, the microphone to you.
About 3 slides back, there was a very bright red object in the exhibition there. Can you tell us what that was?
Yes. Well, so in this inundation, these are only found inside the what I'm now going to call the boat for shorthand. These were stuff from that inundation. There were quite a lot of these red. It's red sandstone. It's the same sandstone you see all the way around here, but it's just lighter and brighter. It's wonderful. It grew brightened my day in my cold little outdoor working space. It's the same rock you see if you go to Wallasey. All those outcrops there. That's what it is. But there are lots of other bits of wood right down in the base of the boat. There's a whole lot of other rocks that have settled in there. Because they are so strange to this area, my geologist Mike hasn't told me what they are yet, but I suspect these are just little bits. They didn't really ballast their boats, this type of car boat, that's a Knorr boat, but I think these are just things that just got left in the bottom of the boat. I don't think they might have been part of the inundation, but I've got quite a lot of other rocks. So these might tell us where this boat has been. It might tell us what cargoes it used to carry. I say, as Steve said, lots more to explore. These are yes, sorry, this is a track which most of them were. I mean, all the glory goes to the long ships, but no, most.
Iron nails and things that we can get them analysed by isotope analysis and compare them with nails and billets from boats in Mossfield or in school level boats in Mossfield or whatever, to see if there's any sort of parallels between that and most of them.
That is a project that Steve and I have been working on for now a couple of years. It's an international project that we're kind of one of the lead, couple of the leaders of, and we're trying to get really to understand, get all the real database of what the isotopes are. So that helps us, as Steve was saying. Even if we don't work out where they came from, absolutely, if we can relate the bits of iron in here to a bits of iron in another ship somewhere else, we can kind of say they were made in the same place. Lots more analysis. Lots more analysis can be done. I'm quite keen on sealing out some of the stuff. I'm quite keen on sealing out some of the samples because this time there will be AI machines that you can give this thing to, and they will tell you. Yeah, they will write the life story of this boat, but yeah. Future. Yes.
This has been just so inspirational. Thank you very much for the work that's gone into it, and also the fantastic talk. I think this is probably a myth, but it's a myth that I've lived with, and I thought that what a shame in 1938 when they found it, they didn't dig it up. Because maybe they could have done that then and we'd have a preserved boat. I think that was probably for the birds, having listened to you, and that probably didn't make that much difference. But I think there's probably a lot of us that have wondered if 1938 was a missed opportunity. What do you think?
Yes, it was. The truth of our heritage is still changing. We will be recording this with the heritage environment. So the fact is, if you looked at one of the last slides, this goes way back underneath the pub. So maybe not us, but future generations, when the pub is knocked down, I have every reason to believe that at least one half of the boat, a quarter of the boat, is there, and yes, I mean safe, yes, but don't please go and tell Green King. I'm asking them to knock the pub down. I am not.
This is, I think we all think that, I'm a local guy, what's been legal in the local church. I have nightmares on concrete slabs. But the concrete slab has destroyed the preservative nuclear environment that puts in, and that's why we have no boats, or only remnants to the boats. That's gone to lots of boat fights in the Isle of Man, the Orkneys, Islands, no boats. There's very few preserved very old ships. Norway is exceptionally the Oslo.
But I am the voice of optimism, and I am saying that underneath, if you go and sit in the pub in the left-hand alcove, or if you're inside the pub, the right-hand alcove, you could, you had a very long pole, you could be steering that boat to safety. I think, just based upon what I've seen, there is a quarter of the boat there to be safe. Please don't go and tell Green Cape. This is for the future. It's a millions of pounds project to do it, and then once you get it, Steve has seen me do this. I've taken great lumps of ancient wood. I brought it. I just wanted to demonstrate to him how fragile this wood is. So I've got a thing, a stick in my arm, and I can just snap it like that. This is very delicate, very difficult. I mean, it really is. But the future, there will be the means to do this. So don't give up hope yet, but just keep taking the tablets and if you live to be 150, I think you'll see it.
We'll go from here, like,
You'll only finding the seat out there, the given seat. So I am as confident as I can be that you're sitting in the back, you're sitting in the boat.
Film stars produce like the rest of the no, it's still be a very, very major farm. If this, I mean, not quite close to line is really high. It improves what we
It's very, very important.
That's very. So it's still very, very exciting. But I'm rest assured that underneath the boat, probably still is the preserve part of the rest of the compost. And that's the book one we start on. Yes.
Could you raise your hand if you want to ask a question?
That's okay. Job, yeah. Look at the carbon dating. You didn't tell us the date.
Oh, right. I didn't tell you the dates because they're all part of this rubbish that was brought in from way back. None of it. It's all far too. We're talking about 5,000 years before present. We're talking. It's all come from the sea. It's all this brushwood that Steve was talking about. Sorry, you're quite right. I didn't. It's all of that stuff that was disturbed was brought in. Sorry, perhaps I was trying to state my embarrassment because I was saying I had this great plan that if we did start at the top, this is normally the way you do it. You do it there, you do it there. You know that it's going to be in that range in between. And no, it didn't. This is all because this stuff is all coming with this great energy because it's not just coming, but it's coming upside down. So, but 5,000 years ago is
the earliest Lingbo found. Was 200 BC in Scandinavia, so it can't be older than was built. It can't be 2000 BC.
Sorry, you're quite right. I didn't do it, but I didn't do it because it's only relevant. It's not relevant. It's relevant to why I think the boat is there, which is this great storm. Yes, thank you.
Anybody else want to ask a question over here?
Yeah, so I was curious about the way the problem is.
Could you make the mic? Because I can't.
So yeah, I was interested in the radiocarbon dates as well. So just because it was a little bit confusing, you made several radiocarbon assays. Why didn't you prioritize the actual clinker wood, the actual planking wood to start with, rather than what was above and what was, that should really have been a priority, should it?
I understand the question completely. Timing is the issue. At that stage, we certain funding sometimes has deadlines by which it must be spent, and we needed to get there was a tranche of money that we had available that we had to get spent by that particular time. At that stage, I had no confidence that I had found that I didn't know. I mean, I hadn't done all the plotting. I was still in the process of extracting things. So I mean, now I've got lots of bits of wood from the boat, but I didn't know it was the wood from the boat then. So I chose. It was my mistake, but I was, because I didn't know. I had not then at that stage. I hadn't identified the planking wood. It's a sequencing thing, I'm afraid. Yes, you're quite right. We should have done that, but the planking, the identification of the planking wood came after the deadline to get the stuff submitted.
And another thing is I was curious, how many auger holes did you make?
I should know that. I can't tell you. 30?
30, right. Okay.
Something like that.
Right. Okay, that's because the only thing I was are you not concerned that the holes that you've actually put in there has there's a possibility that with the ingress of oxygen, that it might affect the preservation conditions
Yeah.
of the whole boat. Has that not been something that you've thought about?
Yes, very, very much so. You know, I'm afraid archaeology, as we have to recognise, archaeology is destruction. We owe it to, we've either got to recover all of it and get all of the data we can. If once you start, you have to accept that you're likely to destroy it. So yes, that is the responsibility on any archaeological project. I took advice about that. Perhaps block the holes, and I did have available to me some Fuller's Earth that I could have injected in there, which was neutral and would have sealed any particular hole. I have to say, slightly amusingly, when the project was being discussed amongst the larger group, there was somebody who did say, I think this is an irresponsible project because if you're going to drill holes in the boat, it's never going to float again. So it's a valid one. It is something that any archaeologist has to consider, and because they are going to increase the destruction, or they are going to either destroy or increase the destruction. I justify it on the basis that I have taken pristine samples of all of these things, which are now sealed up, and so they will be available to the future. But I was also very confident. No, I know that once we got down there, that there wasn't any solid wood. Had we encountered bits of solid wood in a few occasions, then I would have gone to plan D. There were other plans were available to deal with the issue, exactly the issues you raised. You have every single day on a project, you have to assess whether what you're doing is actually benefiting the project, or you're just doing it because you feel like doing it.
And also, Charles, it's less destructive than digging a trench, because then you expose the whole area to what happened in 1938. So going down like that is the least destructive is ground penetrating radar, so that doesn't expose the top, which is what we did. That was part of the project. But the chance of quite, if solid wood had been found by a core sample, then
You'll have when do you estimate this? You'll have
the like next slide. Can you answer that question? Is that? Any more questions?
I'll hang around a bit of investigation.
Just interested in, you mentioned the deluge. Well, you mentioned a deluge that's on the boat. Were there more than one?
Yes.
Geological time. And is it possible to get information about when the boat was actually sunk from looking at other cores in the district?
Yeah.
To get salt and stuff like that, and find out when the deluge happened.
I'm on to that. That's very much an active line of research, and I was looking at stuff on that. In fact, it's at the back of your car, the Meols Boat. I've got some. That's very, yeah. I mean, because I think it again, when one does archaeology, one doesn't do it. One does it to tell people the story of what went on here, and it was an unexpected story that there have been these great surges across the landscape. I will be able to contribute a little bit to that. I do intend to look through the literature to see if we can actually report, say it's there, and Tim had to move his house because there's another one coming.
There's local societies who have been talking about that. It's Jay Watson from one research. We're talking about this tsunami. It's been reported by. But
yes, there have been. We have evidence of quite a number in the profile.
Thank you. You've put together quite a compelling story about this idea of the deluge, and you've obviously spoken about the fact that it was boat initially discovered in the 1930s. How confident can you be that the areas you've been sampling are actually undisturbed layers, and you're not essentially digging through backfill from the excavations of the building of the pub to account for this turmoil and turn up of samples and soil and sediment in all sorts of different periods.
Um, so to go on a side tangent, too many archaeological projects start at the surface, where we dig through all of these disturbed layers. When I run a project, I either have a mechanical digger, and by the time I dig it around, we go down and we strip it down to a context, we call it, a layer where things start to get interesting, which isn't the modern tills disturbed.
So at least part of it got exposed in the 30s. So if the least disturbs or right from the start of the boat, if you excavate, that's basically what
the layers were put back in the original state. So we have to put back where it is.
In that same area, the power cable, the gas pipe, the internet, and there are 5 different services have gone through exactly that area now. So there is, I mean, I had always known that the area where he'd looked was very disturbed. You really, I mean, I can feel when I've got my trowel, I can feel disturbed soil. It's a good question.
The reason about it, like I said, how confident you can be your architects, raising archaeology and from building out.
This particular one, we had this groundworks team working ahead of us, and they went down until we got to an identifiable, sort of a natural, and you know, you understand, natural layer of sand, which from because we kind of did that first data to tell us what we expected to find, what the layers were. We didn't actually get those, but the profile so nicely matched. There have been a lot of other boreholes done around here, quite a few of which I was able to compare with, some of which there's a lot of water extraction has gone on around here. And so I had quite a lot of good data and carbon dating and depth dating. So I was able to say, actually, that layer that's there has been there for a few thousand years. That's so, yeah, I mean, that's so, I'm very confident. The alluvium that's gradually filled the bucket, that of course has come and gone, and I mean, yeah, I could try pollen dating. Well, we might try pollen dating it to try and get profiles of that, but you know, I probably won't.
But the other disappointing thing is not just 1938 when not even photographs were taken of the discovery. That's another great change. But that report from Craig came to light in 1991, 35 years ago, and nothing was done. So you've had 35 years of degradation since that report was deposited. With that, from a local point of view, was also quite disappointing. But the point made before, though, whatever you do, there's a danger of disrupting whatever's down there. But that disruption process was put in process in 1938 when the boat was closed, and that's why it was hardly any wood remaining. Now, it's a question of choosing the least destructive way of investigating what's down there. I mean, this has been there for another 30 years.
It's a very, I mean, it's a very aggressive environment for any sort of organic material. It's you know, it's going fast. What little remains. So, but we've we've got enough to do the work we want to do.
I think so. No more disturbance.
And just, I mean, when you think of an auger, I mean, we really are peering through a keyhole. There's, you know, it's a pretty nicely unobtrusive way of doing things. So I like augering.
Do we have another question from anybody?
Could I just pick up one point about when we plan to do,
The carbon dating on the wood we think came from the boat. First of all, we'll do a species test to make sure it does correspond to planking or peel wood, or not brushwood. Unfortunately, we've used all the funds that we have from the University of Nottingham, actually, who supported it, and Rural Archaeology CIC paid for the augurs. So we're now dependent on the GoFundMe support to complete the project off. And that means further GPR studies. We want to do some more focused GPR in the area of interest. Now we've got the map of, we think, where the boat is. Well, that's going to cost money. And then we've got the DNA analysis, the dating, and other analyses of what we think is the wood from the boat. So we're very grateful for those who've already contributed to the GoFundMe for the Meols Boat project, which Tim set up. So we really would appreciate if anyone wants to donate, and then we'll start to, you can have a free copy of Science of the Vikings, which is includes a bit about the Meols boat, also the DNA, the Wirral West Lancashire Viking DNA project, the restoration of the hog buckets and bridgets, and also the work at Neston with the wonderful sort of replica cross that was done a few years ago. So if you take a book, if you could donate £2.50, which is the cost of the book, or even more, to the GoFundMe, that would really be appreciated. Tim? Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, the GoFundMe is an account which is any monies which are raised by the GoFundMe account. You can see it online. If you put any money into that account, like it, put it into the GoFundMe account, which is controlled by Rural Archaeology CIC, by the treasurer and by Steve here, who will monitor it. I don't have any access to that money. I just created the account for people to give donations as and when. But we don't want to say you must give money. We're just glad, really, really glad you came along to listen to what Steve calls this guy a genius. I just think he's a genius. But to come and listen to chat today, he really did an outstanding talk. I've learned a lot today because I'm found a lot of books of his record. So I think we need to use the guys